Today, RDL session is going down. That is, every session is my favorite session, but this is an extra favorite. So especially now with the leg press, since I switched up to the Cybex one from the Arsenal one. That is like, yeah, it just feels better, this one, especially for like an adductor glute bias. So this is going to be very exciting. So a few updates also in regards to prep. I received my check-in feedback yesterday from Birdo, and the plan is no changes. Like I keep the calories all the same, 2001 to 2200 on my low days, 5 days in a row. That is always important. And then I have 2 consecutive high days with 2006 to 2700 calories, and very important to have them, yeah, like consecutive. So I want to have a window of like 48 hours of overfeeding. Therefore, I can really get the benefits of the high days, not just like for the mental side of thing. I also feel like the physical side of thing benefits from that. It's kind of like a reset in a way. That is why I would always recommend have them 2 days in a row instead of like putting them on a random day during the week, the other one on a random day. I feel like that's less optimal compared to like having 2 in a row, and therefore like also recovering like in a physical way, like giving the body like a longer window of feeling safe again in a way. And this way I really believe it's delaying like all those negative dieting side effects, because we're putting the body in like a state of like being in less worry instead of like having low days all the way. So yeah, no changes when it comes to that. 7 weeks out, no deload is planned until the peak week for Dubai. So I'm now 7 weeks into that block, starting the next block in after next week, and then yeah, no deload until Dubai. This will be the plan. And the only thing though is, if I really feel like a little extra beaten, like a little more beaten up than I want to, I auto-reclutively take 3 days off in a row as a mini deload kind of thing. So now I feel extremely good. Interesting thing as well is during prep for me. I feel somewhat less beaten up from training compared to my off season, right? In the off season, building new muscle tissue is in a way more training stress is needed in a way. And we also like, yeah, train even harder, right? We have a surplus of food, so we are able to train harder. And also during the diet, one thing as well I'm doing is like not taking as many risks. So I go to failure everywhere, but I try to like have even less like fatigue in a way from the movements. And during the off season, it doesn't matter too much when I have a little bit extra fatigue from it. This means I'm more able to recover from it. So during diet, we really just also want to manage fatigue in a good way. So because deficit means recovery is always a little bit plumped, and therefore like training wise, we just want to make sure that we don't generate more fatigue than need be. Major key for retaining muscle. So let's get it going. All right, first set is going down. 8 to 12, slight bit higher rep range than last prep. Mostly to keep my hamstring safe, because last prep, I remember that like a week out or something, I got my hamstring slightly pulled. Was retaining a little water. It got okay during the show, but again, that is something I want to avoid. So slight bit less load, 125, and 3 sets of those. Everything at RPE 9 to 10. And one more thing, like RDLs is one of the movements as well where I tried over the years now to get really more out with less load, to really like just have pure hip flexion, everything on the hamstrings. My lower back is just there to, let's say to stabilize. Because in the past you probably saw me like pulling like doing like 180 kg and so on. And first of all, the fatigue generated from that way too high. And also like the stimulus with my hamstrings is not really that much better, right? Just because more muscles joining in, I can move more load, doesn't mean that like it will create a much better stimulus on the hamstrings. And as well, the recovery side of things when it comes to like, the injuries, like I'm very strong on hamstrings, so I could move much more load, but then again, my connective tissue can't handle it as much. So here I really try to get like the max out with the minimum amount of load. That is especially one of those movements, especially movement where you are prone to injury. You should make sure to really like top-notch execution to really make like that lighter load so hard, so challenging. And this way, major key to stay safe and not injure yourself. Let's get it done. Good set, very good set. Yeah, I reduced the load again. Like last week, I was at 130, but on the second set, I was just getting 8 reps in, and just want to make sure that I focus a little bit more towards the 10 to 12 range here, especially on the first set. So 125 just feels amazing. All right, that is probably my favorite movement of the day. Probably also with RDLs, the hardest one, and that is also one thing which is quite important, is like putting the hardest movements of your session at the beginning, like the majority of it. So I would say the first 3 movements should be like the most taxing, and also like from a mental perspective, like an RDL, for instance, requires like the most amount of focus for me. This one as well. And then after, calves, abs, biceps, adductors doesn't require as much focus, and also also like how much it is beating me up is also much less. So always makes a lot of sense to put like the hardest stuff more or less at the beginning of the session. But again, very context dependent. On leg days at least. On upper body days, a little bit less so, but on leg days I feel like, yeah, because it's way more taxing, all that stuff. So putting it at the beginning makes a lot of sense. Okay, integrated partials here as well. That is a killer. Highly efficient though. First set of 3. Let's get it down. Adductor by stance. So with an adductor by stance, what I'm doing is putting my feet a little bit wider at around 1 p.m. So like a little bit like outward with my feet, like a kind of like a frog stance. And then also initiating with like opening my hips up in a way. And therefore I get also somewhat of glutes in, but mostly like a lot of here adductors. And that is also a thing of when people tell you they feel their hamstrings on a leg press. It is most likely, or it is the adductors. Like a leg press is by far like, yeah, like actually like the like the least efficient movement to train your hamstrings. It's mostly like your adductors, what you're going to feel, yeah, on that one, what you most likely, yeah, confuse with hamstrings. Oh, fuck. Same thing here with integrated partials. It's a little similar like a hack squat, since it's more lengthened base. Means like failure comes much more abruptly in a way. 4 or 5 minutes rest in between sets. Then we're going for the next one. Ooh. And another thing I wanted to touch on is every prep, I try to work on some things to make better. So when I'm done with a prep, I kind of reflect on things, what I have could done better in this prep, and then I trying to do that in the next prep. And it's usually I recommend like waiting a few weeks after prep to be clear, like to think more clearly, because emotions are too high, all of that straight after the prep, and to like really reflect on it. Better to do that a few weeks later. And one thing I wanted to do better this prep is being more friendly in the gym in a way, or more not friendly. It's not like that I'm unfriendly, but more open. At some point during prep, I kind of create a shell of myself that I don't even say hello to people anymore I know, or like, and I believe it's like a kind of way to conserve your energy. Like you see everyone in a gym, especially when you get very lean, as a kind of enemy. You kind of like, you don't want to talk to anyone, want to do your thing. And to some extent we need to do it, right? To some extent we need to like, keep the focus, all of that. However, I think still having somewhat of an openness is important. Like nothing like, can still say hello to people, have a very short small talk, and just make the boundary clear. And the previous preps, I created too much of a shell, kind of like tunnel focus. I don't talk to anyone, do my thing. And this prep, I want to, still be friendly, cool with people, say hello, all of those side of things. And that was one of the main things, like at the gym especially, because here's like that I sometimes go like way too much in the zone. I mean, during a set, hyper important to stay super focused, but also in between sets, like again, there's like nothing wrong to have a short small talk, be friendly, all of that. And I believe this makes the prep even less stress-free in a way, because unconsciously it creates a kind of stress, because you see the gym even more as a kind of like danger zone in a way. And when you still like stay friendly, open, all of that, it is in a way less stressful to do the training, I feel. So that is one of the main things as well I want to work on this prep. And again, the first prep probably it is almost impossible to do so, but that is like, again, you can always make something better. And that is like one of the goals, this one. One thing with cars, main tip, honestly, is, and so simple, what I see so often still the mistake to like people not pausing on the calf raises, and it's so easy to bounce it out with the Achilles tendon. And it's like, right, it's like the biggest tendon in the human body, so it can create a lot of like momentum in a way, and not really working out of the calves and just bouncing out of that lengthened position where it's also the most stimulative, where we want to move out from the muscle. That's why it also makes sense on a lot of movements to like have a slight pause, so you make the muscle basically move out of that lengthened position and not like some bounce, and therefore you get also like more volume in a way from every single rep. But especially on calf raises, major game changer, 4 or 5 seconds. Because in reality, like if you say, tell yourself 4 or 5 seconds, it's mostly like 3 seconds. And that is like a major tip on calf raises. And as well, like you want to imagine that with your heel, you don't only move up with your heel, you want to move up and forward with your wheel, and therefore you really engage with the calves. And besides that, keeping the knees like straight, keeping them still, the hips still, like you don't want to do like anything like that. You want to keep the knees still, and yeah, and really stretching it to the max. There's also a thing with like having the pauses, you stretching it so much where also your hack or pendulum or whatever quad bias quad pattern going to benefit from that as well, since you get like way better, you get like a huge like a loaded dorsiflexion stretch in every time you train your calves as well. That's major thing. Super simple, but as with every simple thing, most people don't want to do it because it sounds too simple to be true. Just simplicity and consistency is the way. Okay, adductors are done. And the reason why I put the seat a little bit back is it just feels better for me. And we also got to remember, like with the adductors, to especially target like that big part of the adductor. It is better to have somewhat of like hip extension with it. The same thing with like on the leg extension. To target the rack femur, we target like that bigger part of the adductor more in a way. And all in all, like again, like I said before, like you can always, especially when you train for a few years, you can always trust your intuition of like what feels better. As simple as that. And yeah, amazing. Like it's the first time, by the way, in my life that I train adductors directly since that last off season, and I think that's brought them up by a bit. So after 10 years of never training adductors isolated, I think like a little bit on top we got out of it, but I would still say the majority of my adductors I got like from like glute dom, adductor dom, leg press, quad patterns. This one is a nice add-on though. All right, guys, session is done. It was a 10 out of 10 session, and that is also one thing. Let me put the camera straight. It's also one thing of like during dieting, there will be, it's more like a wave kind of thing. So some sessions are good, some sessions aren't as good. In off season, it's usually more like your way more frequent good sessions, and the deeper you get into prep, the more you have also like a little of a wave. So this one was just amazing. Recovery on point, output on point, everything on point today. So I love those kind of sessions. And again, there will be sessions where it's not as good. We try obviously to not make that as much happen. So we want to nail recovery. And if there's a session which doesn't feel as good, accepting it, moving on, because it's impossible to always have 10 out of 10 sessions. We want to have that the majority, but he's also accepting it when it's not the case. So we are done with that one. Amazing session again. And now I'm doing 3 rounds of the usual, the posing, and then heading home, eating, and then doing all the other tasks for the rest of the day. So see you in the next one.